Hey there, everybody. This is Kristin from Teaching Balance, and I'm here with you with this week's mindfulness meditation practice. And we are now in the month of April. Happy April to all of you. And the Teaching Balance theme for April is working with difficult or challenging emotions. And I know that, if you're anything like me, as I said in the intro that I sent out on the first of the month, I really feel like working with my stress and challenging emotions is what brought me to meditation, actually. And it has been extremely supportive. But of course, it's an ongoing thing. It's not something where, you solve it and you're no longer disturbed by challenging emotions. That's just sort of the nature of our existence in the human condition. And so I always think it's really valuable to touch on this at least once a year, if not more frequently, because it's inevitable that we're going to be dealing with and faced with challenges in our lives, and then there are the emotions that can follow, and sometimes the emotions themselves arise and can create external challenges, which are kind of interesting. So, as we explore this theme this month, I thought that for this first week, it would make sense for us to talk a little bit more about this idea of making space for your emotions and using the metaphor of allowing them to sit on the bench next to you. So, let me explain a little bit more about that. So, in kind of the ancient Buddhist tradition, one of the metaphors that I've read about that is trying to illustrate the same thing is what they have described as making friends with the bandits on the road. But that just doesn't really resonate for me because I think there's a little bit of a logical dissonance, like, do you really want to be friends with them? And all of that sort of thing. So I like this idea of just whatever you're dealing with, whether it is emotional discomfort, perhaps even going so far as to say emotional pain, or even physical pain. I've actually suggested this to folks who are dealing with chronic pain as a result of various circumstances, that the thing that we perhaps might feel initially inclined to resist or push away, instead allowing it to be. And more specifically, to continue with this metaphor, imagine yourself sitting on a park bench and you're letting this challenge or this difficulty or this discomfort sit next to you. Now, the trick is that you're not pushing it away and not looking at it and afraid of it and, putting on blinders. You don't want to do that. You just sort of want to see it for what it is. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in a moment. And you also don't want to feed it. You don't want to tell the story. You don't want to give it your sandwich. You don't want to, almost fetishize this challenge to the point where you're really just making it worse, even sometimes when we don't realize that we are. And so this whole idea, to circle back, of like taking a good look at it, what I have found is that whatever is troubling or disturbing me, when I stop resisting it and pushing it away and just allow it to be, it often, in reality, isn't quite as problematic or disturbing or painful as I was making it out to be when I was applying this quality of resistance. So I would just invite you to play with this idea, and if this idea is just really unusual and challenging for you, I would start to play with it with minor irritations, for example, bringing to mind something that, someone cut you off in traffic and is still annoying you, and, that sort of thing, and then working your way up to the bigger stuff. So for our actual meditation, what I may do just during the middle of it is have you notice if anything does arise for you that might have a quality of challenge or discomfort, and then we'll kind of play with this a little bit. But otherwise, it'll be just a straightforward practice, because just doing your regular mindfulness meditation, your mindful awareness meditation, does increase your capacity to have a more objective perspective on things that are challenging. So let's just get to it. I'm going to set my timer for 10 minutes. And you know the drill. You can close your eyes or lower your gaze. I like to just roll my shoulders back. It's always useful for me. sitting in a way that's upright but not rigid. And let's begin by taking some of those deep, slow belly breaths. And even if it's tempting to skip this, remembering that it does have a physiological impact on you, and it's very supportive for our purposes of settling into stillness and awareness. So I say don't skip it. And if anything, remember you can always come back to those deeper breaths. So I'm not really going to get into anchors and things like that. You know, I think at this point, what is probably most supportive to you or what feels easy. So I'm going to give us some spaciousness and silence, and then in a few minutes I will check back in and we'll do a little bit of that bench work, if you will. So let's go ahead and just allow things to settle a little bit more. And if you'd like to just keep going with this mindful awareness, you're more than welcome to. But if you'd like to play with this idea of emotions and making space for them on the bench, the first step would just be to check in and notice what thoughts have been pretty predominant for you during this sit. And if they're tied to any emotions, or maybe just an emotion itself is present and there's no narrative thoughts that go with it. And sometimes when emotions are more challenging, they're pretty obvious and easy to discern and notice. But sometimes they're more subtle. And if for some reason there really isn't any challenging emotion present, you can either just allow yourself to savor that, more of this quality of peacefulness. Or if you're interested in exploring this exercise, you could always bring to mind something that you're dealing with, a challenge, personal or professional, and using that perhaps as this object for the exercise. And wherever you find yourself, what I'd like for you to do is literally visualize yourself sitting on a bench. It could be in a park, wherever your mind takes you. And as you're sitting on one half of the bench, I want you to be aware of what we've been talking about, perhaps a challenging emotion, painful emotion, a physical pain, or a challenge that you're dealing with in your life. And as it approaches, even though you might find this quality of resistance and even recoiling, I'm going to invite you to just feel grounded, feel the seat beneath you, and with a quality of detached openness, just allowing that entity, that challenge, that pain, that emotion to just sit next to you. There's no need to engage it in conversation. You're just sitting here, minding your own business. But you're also sitting with this quality of groundedness and quiet strength. And as it takes up space next to you, allowing yourself to realize there's a real deeply empowering quality to letting go of your resistance and allowing it to be here. Again, not feeding it or encouraging it or telling yourself the story about it, but instead just letting it be here. And I'd like for you to play with what that feels like for the final minute or so before we hear the ending bell. And just let yourself settle into this quiet, strong presence of being with what challenges you without resisting it or without feeding it. That's 10 minutes. So if this exercise really felt unnatural to you and sort of awkward, that's entirely understandable. I would still play with it though, and just do it. For example, like let's say you are driving somewhere and someone does something annoying, because that happens all the time, and just sort of like noticing that annoyance and sort of letting it be there, but not feeding it, and telling yourself the story, for example, why you were right to follow the rules of the road and this person wasn't, and all of that kind of thing. And just, you don't have to always picture yourself on the bench per se, but it really is just about allowing yourself to hold space and make space for the presence of this thing that otherwise you might feel a sort of intuitive, kind of instinctive resistance to, and just see what impact that has on your relationship to it. So as always, thank you so much for taking this time for yourself, and thank you for allowing me to accompany you on this journey. And I will see you next week. Take care.